In a world where justice is often blind to color, one shocking arrest on a quiet street spirals into a courtroom. Drama that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about power, prejudice, and redemption. This gripping tale of a racist cop's grave mistake and a black woman's unyielding fight for truth will hook you from the first word. The sun dipped low over the sleepy streets of Fairview, a small town in upstate New York, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt of Maple Avenue. Dr. Angela Harris, a 38-year-old black woman with a sharp mind and an even sharper sense of justice, gripped the steering wheel of her sleek black Lexus. Her day had been grueling back-to-back meetings at the state capitol, where she served as a senior attorney for New York's Department of Justice. Her tailored navy suit was still crisp, her briefcase stuffed with case files resting on the passenger seat. She was exhausted but focused, her thoughts on the upcoming trial that could redefine police accountability in the state. The radio hummed softly with jazz, a small rebellion against the tension of her day. As she turned onto a quiet residential street, blue and red lights flashed in her rearview mirror, jarring her from her thoughts. Her heart sank not out of fear, but out of a weary familiarity. She'd been here before. Officer Daniel Kessler, a 15-year veteran of the Fairview Police Department, leaned out of his cruiser, his hand resting on the holster at his hip. Square jaw was set, his eyes narrowed as he approached Angela's car. Kessler was known in Fairview for his tough-on-crime stance, a reputation that often translated to disproportionate stops of black and brown drivers. To him, Angela's Lexus was an anomaly in this working-class neighborhood, a suspicious vehicle, he'd later claim. Angela lowered her window, her expression calm but her mind racing. She'd dealt with men like Kessler before, men who saw her skin before her credentials, her car before her character. "Good evening, officer," she said, her voice steady, professional. "Is there a problem?" Kessler's lips curled into a thin smile. "License and registration," he said, his tone clipped. Angela complied, handing over the documents with deliberate care. She knew the drill. No sudden movements, no attitude, no room for misinterpretation. Kessler scanned her ID, his eyes flicking between the card and her face. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered abruptly. Angela's brow furrowed. "May I ask why?" she said, her voice still calm but edged with steel. Kessler's smile vanished. "I said, step out now." His hand tightened on his holster, and Angela's pulse quickened. She knew better than to argue on the side of the road. But something in Kessler's demeanor, his quick escalation, his refusal to explain set off alarms. She stepped out, her heels clicking against the pavement, her hands visible at her sides. The stop escalated faster than Angela could have anticipated. Kessler claimed her car matched the description of one involved in a robbery, a claim Angela immediately knew was fabricated. The robbery report he referenced didn't exist. She'd have known, given her role at the DOJ, but before she could protest, Kessler was barking orders, his voice rising. "Hands behind your back," he shouted, pulling out handcuffs. Angela's heart pounded, but she kept her composure. "Officer, I'm a state attorney. You're making a mistake." Kessler scoffed, his face reddening. "Yeah, and I'm the governor. Turn around." The cuffs snapped onto her wrists, cold and tight, as neighbors peeked through curtains. Their whispers drowned out by the hum of Kessler's cruiser. Angela's mind raced, cataloging every detail at time. The street, Kessler's badge number, she'd need it all later. At the precinct, Angela was processed like any other suspect. Her briefcase was confiscated, her phone taken. She sat in a holding cell, her suit now wrinkled, her pride bruised but unbroken. The other officers avoided her gaze, sensing something was off but unwilling to challenge Kessler. He was, after all, a decorated officer with a reputation for getting results. Angela's calls to her colleagues when unanswered, her phone was being held as evidence. They said. Hours passed. The fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the air thick with the smell of stale coffee and desperation. But Angela wasn't desperate. She was furious, and she was already planning her next move. As the night dragged on, a rookie officer, Jenkins, approached her cell. He was young, barely 25, with a nervous energy that contrasted Kessler's swagger. "Ma'am, I looked you up," he whispered, glancing over his shoulder. "You're really a state lawyer." Angela nodded, her eyes locking onto his. "Tell your supervisor to check my credentials, and tell them to do it fast." Jenkins hesitated, then nodded, disappearing down the hall. Angela leaned back against the cold wall, her mind turning to the bigger picture. This wasn't just about her. This was about every black person who'd been profiled, every innocent person cuffed because of someone like Kessler's unchecked bias. She'd make sure this night became his reckoning. By morning, the precinct was buzzing. Jenkins had done as Angela asked, and the supervisor, Lieutenant Margaret Cole, a no-nonsense woman with 20 years on the force, had pulled Angela's file. The color drained from Cole's face as she read, "Dr. Angela Harris, Ph.D. in Criminal Justice, Senior Attorney for the New York State Department of Justice, Lead Counsel on multiple high-profile police reform cases." Cole stormed into the holding area, her boots echoing on the linoleum. "Kessler," she barked, summoning the officer from his coffee break. Kessler sauntered in, his confidence unshaken until he saw Angela standing uncuffed with Cole at her side. "Explain yourself," Cole demanded, thrusting Angela's file in his face. Kessler stammered, his story unraveling. The robbery report he'd cited was vague, unsupported by any dispatch records. Angela, now free and flanked by 2 DOJ colleagues who'd arrived after Jenkins' tip, spoke with icy precision. "Officer Kessler, you falsely arrested me without probable cause, based solely on your assumptions about my race and my vehicle. I'll be filing a formal complaint, and I suggest you lawyer up." Kessler's face twisted, part rage, part disbelief. He'd never been challenged like this, not in Fairview, where his word was law. But Angela wasn't just any citizen. She was a legal force, and she was about to turn his world upside down. Back at her office, Angela wasted no time. She pulled every record on Kessler, 127 traffic stops in the past year, 82% involving Black or Latino drivers. Despite Fairview's predominantly white population, complaints had been filed against him before excessive force, racial profiling, but none had stuck. The department had a habit of losing paperwork or intimidating complainants into silence. Angela's case was different. She had the resources, the connections, and the expertise to take this fight to the top. She called in favors from colleagues, assembled a team of investigators, and began building a case not just against Kessler, but against the systemic failures that enabled him. The twist came when Angela discovered Kessler wasn't acting alone. A whistleblower, disgruntled former officer named Ramirez, reached out, claiming Kessler was part of a clique within the department that targeted minorities to boost arrest numbers. Ramirez had proof: internal emails, body cam footage suppressed by the department, even a group chat where officers bragged about their scores. Angela's heart raced as she reviewed the evidence. This wasn't just one bad cop, it was a conspiracy. But exposing it would mean taking on the entire Fairview PD, a department backed by a powerful police union and a mayor who owed his election to their support. As Angela dug deeper, she faced pushback. Her car was vandalized, her office received anonymous threats, and a local news outlet cozy with the mayor ran a smear piece questioning her aggressive tactics. But Angela was undeterred. She'd spent her career fighting for justice, from defending wrongfully convicted inmates to drafting legislation on police oversight. This was personal now, but it was also bigger than her. She met with community leaders, rallying support from activists who'd long distrusted the police. Together, they planned a public hearing to expose Kessler and his allies, setting the stage for a showdown that would shake Fairview to its core. The public hearing was held in Fairview's town hall, a cavernous room packed with residents, reporters, and a dozen TV cameras. Angela stood at the podium, her presence commanding, her voice steady as she presented her case. She laid out Kessler's pattern of profiling, backed by data, witness testimonies, and Ramirez's explosive evidence. The crowd gasped as she played a suppressed body cam clip of Kessler mocking a black teenager during a stop, calling him boy and threatening to lock him up for breathing. Kessler, seated in the front row, shifted uncomfortably, his face a mask of defiance. The other officers named in the conspiracy sat stone-faced, their union lawyer whispering furiously in their ears. The mayor, a slick politician named Richard Vance, tried to steer the narrative, praising the police as heroes and dismissing Angela's claims as overblown. But Angela was prepared. She called up witnesses' mothers whose sons had been harassed, shop owners targeted for suspicious activity, even Jenkins, the rookie, who testified about the department's pressure to stay silent. The room erupted when Angela revealed the group chat, with messages like another one for the quota and keep the streets clean. The evidence was damning, and the public's outrage was palpable. Then came the second twist. Kessler took the stand. Instead of denying the allegations, he doubled down, claiming he was protecting the community from thugs who didn't belong. His words, dripping with venom, ignited the room. Protesters outside chanted Angela's name, while inside, residents shouted Kessler down. But Angela remained calm, her cross-examination surgical. She dismantled his defense, exposing contradictions in his story and forcing him to admit he'd never verified the robbery report before arresting her. By the end, Kessler was sweating, his career in tatters. The hearing didn't just expose Kessler, it cracked open Fairview's underbelly. The mayor's ties to the police union were scrutinized, and Lieutenant Cole, who'd initially backed Angela, revealed she'd been pressured to bury complaints against Kessler in the past. The fallout was swift. Kessler was suspended, 3 other officers were placed on leave, and the state launched an investigation into the department. Angela's arrest, once a humiliating ordeal, had become a catalyst for change. But the fight wasn't over. Vance, desperate to save his image, was plotting to discredit Angela, and she knew it. Angela's victory at the hearing came at a cost. The threats intensified, her phone buzzed with blocked calls, her email flooded with hate. Vance, sensing his re-election slipping away, leaned on his allies to paint Angela as a radical bent on destroying law enforcement. A local blog, suspiciously well-funded, published a hit piece claiming Angela had falsified evidence. Lie. but one that gained traction among Fairview's conservative voters. Angela's team traced the blog to a PR firm tied to Vance, but proving it would take time, and time was something she didn't have. The state's investigation was moving slowly, and Kessler, though suspended, was still a free man, rallying his supporters at union rallies. The final twist came from an unexpected source, Jenkins, the rookie. He'd been feeding Angela information from inside the department, risking his career. One night, he slipped her a USB drive containing audio of Vance meeting with the police union, plotting to smear her. The recording was gold. Vance admitting he'd handle Angela to keep the peace. Angela knew this was her trump card, but using it would mean escalating the fight to a level that could endanger her safety. She consulted her mentor, a retired judge named Evelyn Carter, who urged her to go public. "You've got the truth, Angela," Evelyn said. "Don't let them bury it." Angela leaked the audio to a major news outlet, and the story exploded. National media descended on Fairview, and Vance's campaign imploded. Protests swelled, demanding his resignation and Kessler's prosecution. Angela testified before a state committee, her voice resonating across the country as she called for systemic reform. "This isn't about one cop or one town," she said. "It's about a system that lets bias fester, that protects the wrong people and punishes the innocent." Her words struck a chord, sparking debates on cable news and social media. The end. Kessler was charged with false arrest and civil rights violations. A rare win in a system that often shielded officers. Vance lost his re-election bid, and the Fairview PD underwent a state-mandated overhaul. Angela, battered but unbowed, returned to her work at the DOJ, her resolve stronger than ever. She'd turned a personal injustice into a movement, but she knew the war wasn't won. As she sat in her office, her briefcase open, her phone buzzing with messages of support, Angela allowed herself a small smile. She'd faced the system and won for now. But the fight for justice, she knew, was never truly over.